The 681st edition of the Four Corners podcast starts right now.
This is the Four Corners podcast.
Elton ready on his second attempt. That one is no good. They battle for it. Loose ball. Recovered Marvin. He scores. 17 seconds left. And he was fouled. Here we go. Lawson with a runner. No. The rebound. Hansbrough at the gun. Got it.
They were 4 for 24.
Hansbrough on a switch on Paulus. A deep three. And Green rips down the rebound in traffic. 4-on-1.
What a great job. What a terrific job in transition. I mean, you couldn't plan that any better as a coach.
Tipped away by Johnson. It's loose. Page. Johnson.
They're dancing in the aisles. They're high-fiving. They're celebrating. They're going bananas on Franklin Street.
Pass to Britt, 15 seconds to play. Up high to Page, gets a screen from Meeks. Page driving in on the left, high off the glass for 2. 6 seconds to go. Pinson comes front court. Pinson to May for the win. Got it! Luke May! He got it! 0.3 of a second! Luke May gives Carolina the 75-73 lead. Are you kidding? Into Dixon. Boozer switches onto him. Dixon the kick. Trimble! Got it! And Carolina wins it!
Here are your hosts, Josh Marlowe and Anthony Pagnotta.
Hello and welcome to another edition of the Four Corners podcast. We are powered by Carolina Electrical Services. Josh and Anthony back with you guys here on a Wednesday. Here to recap Carolina's 67-63 win over Clemson to win on senior night, to improve to 24-6 on the year, 12-5 in the league, and set a new home record for most wins in a single season at home, and finished their first unbeaten season since the national title year of 2016-2017. We have a lot to get to from the win. We'll take a look at the box score. You'll hear from Hubert Davis. You'll also hear from Seth Trimble on the win as well. We have our stat of the game, thoughts, takeaways, discussion topics, game balls, and so much more. But we'll just go ahead and give you the initial recap. As I mentioned, Carolina beats Clemson 67-63. They were actually trailing at halftime 30-27, but they were able to come back and win the ball game, outscoring Clemson 40-33 in the second half. They had two big runs. They had a 12-0 run that turned a 37-32 deficit into a 44-37 lead. And they had a 9-0 run that turned a 55-52 deficit into a 61-55 lead that was able to catapult Carolina to the win. They were led by Luka Bogavac. He had a career best as a Tar Heel, 20 points coming off the bench. He was 6 of 10 from behind the three-point line, the first Carolina player to make 6 threes in a game since R.J. Davis did it last year against San Diego State in the first 4 in Dayton. And outside of him, the only other Tar Heel to score in double figures was Henry Vassar. He had 13 points, was 6 of 9 from the field before he fouled out of the game. And look, this was not a pretty game. This was not a game that really Carolina ever had control of. Even though they led for over 25 minutes, it felt like there were just different points in time that it was going to be Clemson's night because they made buckets when they needed to make buckets. They never let Carolina really pull away and put the game away. But as this team has done more often than not this year, when the game was close in the final minutes, they found a way to emerge victorious. And I think that's what all last night was about. And frankly, that's what this time of the year is about. Like, you want to win and you want to shoot well and you want it to be pretty. But in March, man, you just got to win. It doesn't matter how it looks. As long as you got more points on the scoreboard, that's all that matters. And I think last night could go a real long way for this team, finding yet another way to win a game when they're not at their best.
Yeah, I mean, that's the best way to put it, is that you're going to face a majority of different teams that are going to throw, a ton of different things at you. So you want to be prepared for whatever a team is going to be able to throw at you. This game sort of gets you prepared for what could happen against Duke. Duke has the same ability to muddy games up and make it ugly if they are in a close game because of how good they are defensively. And so I think Carolina got a little taste of that in this game. They found a way to get through it, and you end up getting a guy that, we were talking about is struggling with consistency. He's been doing it all year long, but you get him to step up in one of the biggest moments of the season and have his career game and really go off for Carolina and Luka Bogavac. So I think it's a huge, huge plus for Carolina. I mean, yeah, would you like it to have been played at your pace? Would you like this to be a game that you would have won by more points? You would have scored more points in? Oh, certainly. Of course you would. But at the end of the day, all that really matters is that Carolina's winning. And that's what's getting them towards getting a double bye in the ACC tournament. And more importantly, you're winning without your best player. That's the thing, is when you set out after the injury to Caleb Wilson, nobody was saying, well, it has to look a certain way when Carolina wins games. No, the thing was just find ways to win games, because nobody thought this team was going to be 5-1. Even the most optimistic Tar Heel fan out there, you were not sitting there, unless you're lying to yourself, you were not sitting there and saying, yeah, I think this team's going to be 5-1 without their best player. And especially if you said, hey, Henry Vasar is going to miss a couple of games in there too. So, I mean, yeah, this is a great job by Carolina of being able to adjust once again. Wasn't your night offensively. You only shoot 38% from the field, but you made the shots that you had to make. You went on the runs that you had to go on, and those are the teams that are going to be able to make it deep in the NCAA tournament because they can play a majority of different ways, and that's how it's starting to feel with this Carolina team.
No, I think you're definitely right. That's one thing that I talk about a lot is you got to be able to win games in different ways. You got to be able to win games that you play really high level offense. That's what Saturday night was. You won a game that was in the 80s. You turn around 72 hours later, you shoot less than 40%. You were outscored in the paint by 16 points, but you still found a way to win. And what they've done is they've really built up some armor to where we kind of now there's a trust with this team that you think they're going to find a way to make the winning play. And at different points in the game, or in different points this season, it's been different players because of the injuries to Trimble, to now Caleb Wilson. Like last night, it was Luka Bogavac and it was Derek Dixon. Those were the guys making the big plays late for Carolina. And they were designed plays for those guys to take the shots that they took, and they were tough enough to make those shots. So, it was really as gut-wrenching as it was to watch in person. We were both there. We were in the arena last night as fans. There's an immense sense of pride that you come away with this, because I don't know if I thought Carolina could win this game that way 2-3 weeks ago. But now they've proven that they can win yet in just a different form, a different fashion. And it's why it's going to lead us to have a conversation about, we hope this story isn't done being written, but there's a lot of data to suggest that this has already been a successful season in more ways than one, with what Carolina was able to do last night. Getting it, and look, it was an emotional win. Like, you could tell it was senior night. You could tell that I think the emotions got to Trimble because up until he made that little runner in the lane to put Carolina up 6, he made his first shot, which was a corner 3, and then he missed his next 8. And struggled with some turnovers in between. But I also think that also fueled Carolina because there was this sense of we're not losing this game. We've run a 17-0 record at home. We got a chance to make history. We're not going to let this go to the wayside, let alone go to the wayside in the final home game for a decorated Tar Heel like Seth Trimble, like Elijah Davis, the son of our head coach. Let's take a look at the box score here for Carolina's win over Clemson. And look, if there's some areas that are pretty, there are some areas that are not. As I mentioned, Carolina shoots 38% from the field. They were just 22 of 55. Clemson shoots 43%. The Tigers were 26 of 60. Here was a big difference in the ball game, though. Carolina, 12 of 27 from 3. So you get double-digit makes on a real high percentage compared to Clemson, just 7 of 20 for 35%. And if we're being honest, if Carolina wouldn't have played the drop coverage that they played that allowed, Godfrey to make a 3 and Carter Welling to make some 3s, that percentage, it could have been a whole lot worse. Free throw shooting advantage Carolina. They were +7 in makes, +9 in attempts. Carolina 11 of 15 from the foul line. Clemson was just 4 of 6. Turnovers, Carolina responded not committing as much, just 9 turnovers last night. It did, though, lead to 14 points for Clemson. They forced 10 turnovers and scored 13 points off of them. Rebounding in favor of Carolina, 37-36. They were out-rebounded on the defensive glass, 29-28, but did out-rebound Clemson on the offensive glass, 9-7. Second chance points in favor of Carolina, but a low total in that area, 5-2. Bench points, it was +16 for Carolina. Do have to remind you, though, that Luka Bogavac, his 20 points came off the bench because Elijah Davis got the start for it being senior night. Points in the paint go the favor of the Clemson Tigers, as I mentioned, 34-18. Fast break points go advantage of Clemson, 6-3. Blocks in favor of Clemson, 5-2. Steals go Carolina's way, 6-4. The Heels had 13 assists on 22 made baskets. Clemson with 11 assists on their 26 made baskets. The game was tied 3 times. There were 10 lead changes, but all in all, Carolina led for 25 minutes and 53 seconds. There are stats that are always telling about what a team is under their head coach. When Carolina shoots under 40%, I would probably beg to tell you that that's where a lot of their losses come from, is not playing well offensively. And, we talk so much about points in the paint, an area that Carolina was dominated in last night, and unlike Virginia Tech, never corrected it. Like, was never able to really get back into, contention in that area where, part of it is Clemson doesn't let you get to the rim, and then guys just struggling to make shots. And so you don't like seeing a team shoot under 40%. You don't like being outscored in the paint by nearly twice as many points as you scored. But the fact that Carolina still found a way to win a game like that shows you how good this team is. Because middle of the road teams that don't have a high ceiling to play deep into March, whether it's in their conference or in the NCAA tournament, they can't win games like that. But this team has proven over the last 3 weeks, right, that they can win a game by being out-rebounded. They can win a game by shooting 47% from the foul line. And last night they proved they can win a game while being outscored by 16 in the points in the paint.
Yeah, I mean, when we talked about this game, one of the things that we said is you've got to find a way to shut their inside game down and really force them to have to shoot from the perimeter, because mean, look, their big men, I think, shot the ball well from the outside, especially Carter Welling. I thought he had a good night from beyond the arc. But you look at Nick Davidson, 0 of 5 from beyond the arc. The guards really struggled shooting from the outside in this game. And so that should have been the plan for Carolina. But, sometimes those plans get adjusted, man. RJ Godfrey was having a ton of success on the inside. Carolina just never really seemed to have any sort of answer for him. And so that was certainly part of the reason why this game was played the way that it was played. And you're right. I mean, for them to find a way through it where, on the defensive end, you can't really necessarily get the stops that you needed to in the paint. They were getting, pretty much whatever they wanted there, and that was opening up their perimeter game for some of those guys to knock down shots from the outside. And then, on the offensive end, I think ton of credit has to be given to Clemson for just staying in front of guys. Like, it's very similar to what happened. And Carolina lost a game like this just a few weeks ago. When they played Miami, this is exactly what Miami was able to do. They were able to cut off the driving lanes, and Carolina really wasn't able to do anything. And in this game, this is where Luka Bogavac steps up, and that was what the biggest difference was. I said it when we were sitting there last night watching the game. I said, this is where you need somebody to step up on the perimeter. And this was early in the game. I was like, look, you just don't have that guy that is a lethal threat from the outside that for sure is going to be that guy. And here comes Luka stepping up and putting together the best game of his career so far at Carolina. So, hopefully that's something that's sustainable, because there are going to be good defensive teams that Carolina is going to run into when they get into the NCAA tournament. If teams are able to cut off the driving lanes like you saw from Clemson, you got to be able to make shots from the outside. So hopefully, we start to see the wheels turn for Luka, and he starts to look more consistent. A little bit more consistency from Jonathan Powell as well. Hopefully that's in the cards. And if you get that, then I think Carolina is going to have a chance to be successful, even in games like this where things are getting muddied up. In terms of the, what they do for denying the points in the paint, I mean, it's just about being tougher, man. There were moments last night where guys just got pushed around, but I thought late in the game, and we've seen this multiple times from Carolina this year, where, a team is successful doing something. There's some element of the offensive game that they're succeeding in. And as they get late into the game, Carolina is able to shut it down. And remember, they had to do it without Henry Vassar on the floor for a certain period of time due to the fact that he ended up fouling out. So credit to those guys for finding a way to shut off what Clemson was doing at the rim late. And ultimately it leads to a nice Tar Heel victory that has us feeling like Carolina's got some good momentum as they head towards the ACC tournament and then, of course, into the NCAA tournament.
Let's now get to the quotes of the game. These will focus on the senior night stuff, which was the biggest thing going into the game, was to send Seth Trimble out, Elijah Davis out with one final win, and Carolina was able to achieve that behind, once again, just a fantastic Smith Center crowd. Look, this is the most that we've gone to games in a single season. I think I was in that gym, I think with 18 home games, 12, 13 times I think I was there this year alone. There was never, I felt like a crowd that was, quote, disappointing. Like, crowd was big every night. They were loud every night. They made a difference every night. And Hubert Davis, we'll play his comment first. He talked in this postgame about hoping that we can celebrate Seth Trimble the way we should after his Carolina career does come to an end sometime later this March, hopefully in April.
I really hope that Seth is being celebrated as much as he should. We talk about a number of players, and rightfully so, but Seth should be talked about a lot as well. As accomplished as a player he is, the commitment that he's had to this team and to this program and to this university. He talked about it in his speech, this is his second home. The relationships that he has built over the last 4 years, those aren't just relationships with his time here. Those are relationships for the rest of his life. And it's because he stuck around.
I don't mean this in a slight towards Trimble, okay? I did not think going in that I would be, I'm not going to say as emotional, but I guess as moved as I was about watching him play in his final game. Like, I've obviously loved him. He's a Tar Heel. I've been a big fan of his, but he wasn't Marcus Page to me. He wasn't Joel Berry to me. He wasn't RJ Davis to me. So I didn't quite know how I was going to feel, but I found myself when the game was at the under 8-minute timeout and you didn't know who was going to win, feeling the same way I felt when it was RJ senior night, when it was Joel Berry senior night, when it was Marcus Page's senior night, Armando Bacot's. Man, we got to find a way to win this game. This guy can't leave on a loss. He can't. And you know, is his number going to go into the rafters? It's not, unless Carolina goes on to win a national championship, because every player that's on a title team, their jersey does get honored. No, he that's not going to happen. But I think we got to remember, this was the first significant recruit that Hubert Davis landed. Like back when we had just, became the Roy's Boys podcast or the Four Corners podcast, he was one of the first recruits that we talked about. And yeah, he did enter the transfer portal because that's just about what 95% of every player in college basketball is ultimately going to do. But for whatever reason, whether financial, role, whatever, he came back to Carolina. You would have never thought that he even thought about leaving because he's always felt like Carolina. And in this day and time, I do think for even someone like me that maybe he doesn't have the emotional attachment to him as a player like I had with other players, it'll be easy to celebrate him the way that Hubert Davis desperately wants him to be celebrated and remembered for his time as a Carolina basketball player.
Yeah, and it's really been within the last month that everything, I think, has taken a turn even further, because with that moment that he had against Duke, I think that just locks it up for so many people, right? Where now you're saying it's impossible to forget you, because we're going to see that play over and over and over again. It's a buzzer beater in the greatest rivalry in sports. And they do it every year where they run the montage of, Austin Rivers hitting the shot. Sometimes they'll throw the Trey Jones shot in there and stuff like that. This is one, though, that I think is going to stick for a while because of the legendary call that was made. Great job by Dan Schulman on the call. And it was Carolina's first buzzer beater in the series. So I really do think that it's going to last. And that's where I think for Tar Heel fans, you maybe got to that point last night where, before that shot happened. I mean, I'm not saying nobody would have been saying, oh, yes, so if we lose this game, who cares? But people would have been like, listening last night, there probably would have been a lot more people that would have said, do we really want to stick around for these senior speeches? Like, are we sticking around for Seth? Is he really a legendary enough Tar Heel to stick around? That moment, I think, really boosted everything. And you could see that moment meant a lot to a lot of people. I mean, his ovation that he got throughout the night when he was introduced and everything like that, the loudest that I've heard all season long. And yeah, it's because it's senior night, but at the same time, I think there was a little extra because of that shot against Duke. So I think that moment means so much to a lot of people that last night he became one of those guys that it felt similar to Marcus. It felt similar to Joel. It felt similar to RJ, where you were like, dude, just please pull this out for him. He deserves this moment. And the same thing with Elijah. I thought that was a cool moment too. He gets in the game at the very end as well after playing early in the game. I thought that was cool. But last night was Seth's moment where he was able, and the thing that I thought was cool, Joey Powell from Inside Carolina tweeted this out, and I thought, it was something I didn't even notice. Thinking back to the game, first points of the game, Seth Trimble. last points of the game, Seth Trimble. So it wasn't a perfect night from him, but he bookends the night with a couple of important points that ultimately end up helping Carolina win the game. So, it was really cool, man. I didn't shed a tear or anything like that, but I thought the speech was really awesome from Seth as well. And I thought both guys really delivered on their speeches.
Let's now move to Seth Trimble. We don't have audio from the speech, but we have audio from him meeting with the media. Look, in this day and time, guys like him, we can't bank on seeing another 4-year player.
Mm-hmm.
There were 22 players that have been honored during the various senior nights so far around college basketball this year that are 4-year players at that institution. 22. Let that number sink in. Hubert has addressed it, but Trimble talked about it as well, where he was pleading and making the case for him not to be the last 4-year player to ever make his way through the program.
For you too.
I really hope I'm not, but if I am, I think it speaks on just the character and the love and the passion I have for this university. For being real, me leaving my sophomore year would have been very, very logical. I took a huge chance coming back here with 5-star freshmen coming in, best guard in America returning, elite point guard coming back. The backcourt was packed. A transfer like Cade Tyson coming in, but I took a chance because I couldn't leave. I didn't want to, and I couldn't. The love I had for this place and everything else was just too strong. So, yeah.
2 more for Seth.
Whenever Hubert Davis is recruiting, there's not a better message to play to a recruit than that message right there. I couldn't leave because of what this place means, what this place represents, what being a Carolina basketball player offers. And I do think, he was right. How many guys would have come back to a situation where you had the best guard in the country returning for his senior season? You had an incoming 5-star freshman that was maybe from a talent perspective the most gifted player on the roster a year ago in Ian Jackson. You went and brought in Cade Tyson. You have Elliot Cadeau, who everyone thought was poised to be the player that we're now seeing him be at Michigan. How many guys stay? There aren't many. And I do think more than anything, look, we know that Carolina is paying him. We know that he was benefiting financially by being a member of by being an athlete. But I do think what drew him back was what other place can offer me what this place can offer me. When we say that's not a 4-year decision, it's a 40-year decision. It's a life-changing commitment when you enroll at Carolina, whether it's as a basketball player or just a regular student. That place is that impactful. And so if he is the last, and I hope he's not, I'm happy for him because there's not a better example of what we want a Carolina basketball player to be. But I also think that could be a real good message, a real good sounding board for Hubert Davis in this program when they go recruiting that, hey, yes, everything is changing around the sport, but Carolina is still Carolina. And there aren't many places that can impact your life the way we can if you give us a chance and you give us 4 years.
Yeah, I mean, it's an amazing message to hear it from a guy that was so close, to leaving. And it was close, guys. Like with what he said last night, there were moments where he was right on the precipice of being gone somewhere else, probably going back home. He talked about how his relationship with Hubert Davis in the first year wasn't great. And I would imagine that after that game against Alabama, it wasn't great either. And so, for him, it would have been easy for him to just say, you know what, I'm out, man. I'm not listening to what anybody tells me. I'm not even entertaining the fact of coming back. I'm going. And I'm going to go somewhere where they value me a little bit more. And, I'll get to play. And the thing that's amazing is he decided, no, I don't want to do that. I want to stick it out. This is my dream. This was my dream because, I think it really started forming when his brother, JP Tokido, went there. I think he said, let me stick it out one more year. And it's amazing the player that he has become, because you got to think, first 2 years when he's on campus, not a starter. He's a guy that's just a piece off the bench for Carolina. You were trying to figure out what exactly he was going to be. By the end of his time in Chapel Hill, we're talking about he's the most important player on the floor. Henry Vassar brings a lot to the table. There's no doubt about that. But if Seth Trimble doesn't play well, Carolina's in trouble. And we've been saying that here, especially with Caleb Wilson on the sidelines for a while now. So I thought that was it was perfect for him to go out the way that he did. I'm hoping he's not the last 4-year player. People were, asking about that. There's a small group chat that we're in that was asking that question of who would be the next guy. I would think that, Derek Dixon is probably your best chance. That's probably a guy that you're looking at and you're thinking, okay, probably could be a 4-year player. I don't think that he's a guy that's getting ready to go to the NBA anytime soon. I do think he's someone that Carolina values and thinks it very highly of and wants to use in what they're doing moving forward. And so I think, he's got your best shot of being that guy. But would it shock me if he ends up transferring at some point? No, nothing in this day and age shocks me, because you see all the money that's moving around. You see the opportunities that are moving around for certain guys. And it gets enticing, man, to go somewhere else and say, let me just get a fresh start. But that's not what Seth did. So he's a rare guy in this generation. And I'm just really glad that he stuck it through, because he's a guy that I'm going to remember for a while. We were talking on radio today and trying to figure out, who does he compare to in Carolina lore? I don't know if there's somebody that he really compares to. I think you could look at statistics and say, oh, he compares to this guy, he compares to that guy. But I really think that in terms of the legacy for what has happened in the last month, I think is something that is unprecedented in Tar Heel history. And it's really cool to be watching this as it comes down the stretch.
Yeah, I think what he did was he wrote his own legacy. And what he's now forced us to find the next person to compare to Seth Trimble. Mm-hmm. Not who are we comparing Seth Trimble to, but are we going to see that guy that reminds us of Trimble maybe in the next 5 to 10 years? Let's get back into the more specifics from the win over Clemson last night. The stat of the game, for me, I thought it was very simple because, Carolina wins. We go this route. If we would have lost, we would have went points in the paint. But Carolina's 3-point shooting. Carolina doesn't win the game without their 3-point shooting last night. And I have found it really, it's almost like poetic justice, where it has felt like when Carolina's offense hasn't been there, and that hasn't really been all that frequent. Like Carolina, had they maybe been as explosive offensively as I thought they were going to be? No, but when you play through your bigs, most of the time you're not really explosive. You want to be efficient, and Carolina most definitely is that. But they go 12 of 27 from 3 last night against the second best defensive team in the league. And that's when they've needed, it feels like when they've needed the 3-point shooting to be there, they've gotten the perimeter shooting that they need. If it were more consistent, I think we would feel a lot more optimistic about their ceiling in terms of what they could do in the NCAA tournament. But, you get 6 from Luka last night, but you get 3 of 4 from Derek Dixon. Trimble goes 1 of 4. Jaren Stevenson goes 1 of 2. Jonathan Powell goes 1 of 3. So it was spread out. And then defensively, you give up 7 makes, so not a high number. You were +5, so you're +15 in that category. But I mean, if there's something you could nitpick, had Carolina not played the drop coverage that they played, and I understood on the surface why they did that, was because of what the stat sheet told you, what the scouting report told you, was that Clemson could not make perimeter shots. But there were some that Carter Welling, I mean, if you're an ACC caliber basketball player, you're going to make the 2 that he made. The one that Godfrey made, you just got to live and die with the one that he made. But on the flip side, Carolina's perimeter defense, which hasn't quite really been an issue since they came back from the West Coast. It wasn't great against Miami. It wasn't necessarily great against NC State. But outside of that, they've been back to what they were in the non-conference season, where they don't give up a lot of makes. They're holding teams to about 35% or worse from behind the three-point line. So good on Carolina last night for the perimeter shooting that Hubert Davis talked so glowingly about in the offseason, showing up in a big way, because there's no doubt about it, with the way that Carolina struggled to score from inside the three-point line, had they not been hot from deep, I don't think they come away with the win last night.
No, absolutely not. They do not come away with the win last night if they end up hitting even 9 threes. I don't think Carolina ends up winning the game. I think they probably, with what they were being shown defensively, in terms of how Clemson was guarding the paint, I don't know how easy it would have been for Carolina to get in there. Some of the shots that they took from the outside, they had to take. There was no choice. It was either that or you're not throwing up a shot. It's going to be a shot clock violation. And the shots were falling last night. Great job by Luka Bogavac. But man, yeah, Derek Dixon was huge. 3 threes, and it felt like all 3 of them were very, very impactful for him. And so I think that's ultimately what you look at from Carolina in this game. And you take away that, yeah, this was probably the biggest difference, was because, yeah, they shoot 44% from beyond the arc. Coming into this game, Clemson was allowing teams to shoot 31.3% from beyond the arc, which is 51st in the country, one of the top marks in the ACC. So they were a team that was really good at taking away the three-point shot. That's something that they focused on, and that was something that they'd been successful doing. And Carolina was able to step up, knock down shots when they needed to. Some tough shots from Luka Bogavac too that end up going down. Yeah, there were some ones that he was open on. There were some other ones that were pretty tough for him to be able to knock down, and he does. And so credit to them on that end. Yeah, you talked about it on the defensive end. There are some areas where, because of the drop coverage, you got frustrated, especially when it came to Carter Welling. But at the same time, it doesn't end up killing Carolina in the end. And so I think that's the way that you look at it, is that, you're going to live with guys shooting it from the outside if it's the bigs shooting it from the outside. But it's something that Carolina just needs to be aware of going into the ACC tournament and the NCAA tournament. There are going to be teams that are going to have bigs that can shoot the ball from the outside. Need to make sure you're trying to take that away, especially if you realize that, hey, this guy's on tonight. He's starting to hit some shots from the outside. Maybe I need to step out there and contest rather than double in the post, because if they're making shots from the outside, 3's better than 2, guys. We've talked about it at multiple times this year, especially when Carolina was struggling. So I think that's probably the adjustment that you end up making there. But other than that, I thought Carolina, for the most part, like I said, the defense against the guards shooting 3s from the outside, there was no room for those guys to shoot from the outside. I mean, you didn't see really anybody outside of their bigs that really felt confident enough to take shots from the outside. I mean, Justin Porter was the guy that took the most at 3. There are other guards. I mean, you're talking about none for Dylan Hunter, none for Ephraim Johnson, or 1 from Ephraim Johnson, excuse me. None from Dallas Thomas, just 2 from Ace Buckner, who that's another guy that likes to look from the outside. And so Carolina just did a really good job of taking away that area. And you got to give credit to these guards, man. They've had moments this season where they haven't necessarily been great. Last night did have some trouble staying in front of guys, but in terms of the perimeter defense, which we talked so much about early in conference play, they have made the adjustments that they've needed to make.
All right, let's get into some thoughts and takeaways before we have our discussion topic and hand out some game balls. Should have known that the second that I fired off my tweet that went, let's just call it UNC viral on Saturday, about my belief that Jonathan Powell gives Carolina a greater ceiling than Luka Bogavac, that Luka was going to respond and make me look like the idiot that I am. And that's what he did last night. Has his first 20-point game as a Tar Heel, his first big game really as a Tar Heel all year long. And quite frankly, I think that was the Luka Bogavac that I thought we were going to get all year. Like, it was pretty much, hey, we're going to run you off a bunch of screens, a lot of flares, but we want you shooting the ball from the outside. And he responded in a big way. Go 6 of 9 of 6 of 10 from the 3-point line. Was 6 of 14 from the field overall. So 0 of 4 from 2, but 6 of 10 from deep. Leads Carolina with 20 points. And I think, like, that's the way Hubert Davis should use him. That should be what when he's on the court. We're going to run offense for you. I don't need him putting the ball on the floor and looking to drive. I don't. I know that you want to have that threat, but his driving doesn't scare anybody. Can he get by some guys in this league? He can. There were 3 times last night he drove into the middle of the defense and either threw up a bad shot, got tied up. Nothing positive happened. But he can come off ball screens and shoot threes. He can create with his dribble. So I'll say this. I still believe what I believe about Jonathan Powell has not changed. I still think that Carolina is better when he's playing at a high level because he competes more defensively, rebounder, and can score the ball in a variety of different ways. But if Carolina can get this type of production, and I'm not talking about 6 threes, but if Luka Bogavac can shoot 40% from 3 the rest of the season, Carolina will be tougher to beat. And I hope maybe Hubert Davis can maybe make that simple minor adjustment saying, hey, look, man, I don't need you putting the ball in the basket and looking to drive and finish or create for others. Just come off these screens and look to shoot and give me 8 to 10 attempts per game. But regardless, he was the best player on the floor. Carolina ran their offense through him in crunch time, and he responded with his first real big moment as a Carolina basketball player.
Yeah, I mean, if you can continue to do what you did in this game, which was the dribble handoff, you did it often, and it worked. And he's a guy that came off of that handoff and was immediately able to knock down shots. That's something that you're going to want to do over and over again until somebody can stop it, because that was where he was in the most rhythm. That's a little bit different than what we've seen from him this year, where I don't know if he's necessarily the guy that's a catch and shoot type of guy. But I do think that when you have certain actions like they were running last night, that really serves him well. It allows him to get rhythmically into the shot that he wants to take. And so I think that's one of the things that Carolina ultimately wants to do. But the other thing is, man, it's also on Luka, man. You just got to be more consistent. And this is the thing. We love what you did in this game. It was sensational. We don't win the game without the way that Luka Bogavac played in this game. But you need him to be consistent when you get into, starting Saturday. And then from there, as you get into the postseason, you need him to be consistent. Because as we've said, you've needed that guy from the outside that is a consistent 3-point threat. There's not a guy on this team right now that you can say that about, because there's nobody that you're saying, hey, guaranteed, this guy is coming out and hitting at least 1 3, if not 2 a game. And that's just what you're looking for, right? When you need a clutch shot from the outside, you just need somebody that is going to step up consistently. And, I love Jonathan Powell. I think he's a guy that, as I've said, should be playing more because of his defensive effort and everything like that. Even he hasn't provided that consistent 3-point shot that you need from the outside. Luka was that guy that we thought was going to be able to do that. You go back to the blue-white scrimmage. We watched that performance and we thought, oh, this is exactly what he's bringing to the table as a guy that can shoot from the perimeter. And I remember that. I remember sitting in the Smith Center and saying, man, this guy, if he shoots like this, he's going to be great. We hadn't seen that guy since that moment until last night. And so we got that moment last night. And now you're just wondering, can this be the moment that everything starts to click for him? He's been playing better than he was early in the season. There's no doubt about that. He's a guy that's been giving you, 12, 14, 15, but then he has those games where he's just off and he's got 6 points, but he's got 4 turnovers to go with it. He's throwing up shots from the outside, doesn't end up making any of them. He's 0 for 5 from beyond the arc. You just got to eliminate those types of games and just give me, even if it is a quote unquote off night, give me 10, knock down 2 from the outside. That'd be great. That's what you're looking for, hopefully moving forward from him. I think he's capable of it. Now let's see if it actually happens.
Got to talk about 2 guys bouncing back in a big way. Got to wonder what last night did for Derek Dixon's confidence. Hitting those 3 threes. The fact that, Hubert called timeout, I think it was 61-59, calls a play. And unlike, the Kentucky game where he had to make the plays, that was a design 3 for him. And he stepped right into the shot and he made it. And then Jaron Stevenson. Jaron Stevenson was not good against Virginia Tech, had his first real bad game since the Caleb Wilson injury. But he quietly last night in 35 minutes gives you 9 points and 10 rebounds. Was 2 of 3 from the field and 4 of 5 from the foul line. Also chipped in, 3 assists. And look, when you get Caleb Wilson back, is his production going to be as critical? No. But does Carolina win the game if he doesn't get that offensive rebound in the final minute?
Exactly.
I don't know. And what he has had a knack of all year long is making those plays that are timely, that impact winning. Like, if there's one thing I've learned about Jaron Stevenson, the Tar Heel, it's that he's a winner. Like, when I look at him, I see a winning basketball player. He impacts winning because he does whatever is asked of him. And there's some nights we've needed him to score. And there have been nights that he scored. There have been nights we just need you to go board, and he's gotten to the boards. There have been some nights we just need you to defend and be willing to chase that guy through, 6-7 ball screens, but be right there on his hip pocket. And he's done that. And so that's another weapon that Hubert Davis will have in his arsenal when Carolina gets Wilson back. Because how many guys have a guy like that either starting at the 3 spot or coming off the bench? There aren't many teams in the country that have a Jaron Stevenson. And so really happy for those 2 guys. Dixon's confidence is going to be the key because when he's been confident, he's been a double-digit scorer. Carolina's offense has really played at a high level. I do think, look, the floor is condensed. There's not as much room for him to operate without Caleb Wilson. The game will be easier when CW does come back. But until then, he needs to be the guy we saw last night if Carolina wants to go in Cameron and win a game or win a couple games next week in the ACC tournament.
Yeah, it's amazing that you tie these 2 together because these are the 2 guys that end up linking up on the play that you talked about. That offensive rebound, that came before Hubert calls timeout, sets up the play for Derek Dixon. That play is the reason that Carolina wins this game. Because it puts them in position where Clemson starts fouling and ultimately Carolina runs out the clock. That was a massive, massive play because the possession where he ends up pulling down the rebound wasn't a great look. Wasn't a great possession for Carolina. And he ends up coming away with just an effort play. We've been asking for guys to make these types of plays for the entirety of the season. We're saying there's moments where, dude, Henry, you got to come away with a rebound, man. You didn't have to say that last night with Jaron Stevenson. Oh, you got to come away with that rebound. Every rebound that he came away with felt important, and he made sure that he came away with it. It was an aggressive night from him on the boards. And I think, you're talking about him being a guy that's going to be coming off of your bench potentially when Caleb Wilson returns. We got to see what they're going to do with the starting lineup. Are they going to have Luka come off the bench? I mean, if he's going to score 20 off the bench, then they might just do that. Or they could have Jaron Stevenson come off the bench. Regardless, I mean, that's going to be huge for you to have a guy that can play like that. And now you've got guys. This is what we've talked about with the depth. Like last night, Henry ends up leaving the game. I mean, earlier in the season, we are, just completely awestruck and we say, oh my gosh, there's no way Carolina's winning this game because Zayden High's coming into the game. Now you trust Zayden High. Same thing with Caleb Wilson. Well, God forbid Caleb Wilson gets into a little bit of foul trouble early in a game. We used to think, oh man, Carolina's in trouble. Who are they going to play at that 4 spot that you can trust? Now you got Jaren Stevenson who you can trust. So I think he's gotten to that point this season where it's been a steady incline for him, I think, the whole year. And you got that moment again last night where he steps up. He gives you the most rebounds on the team. He pulls away the most important offensive rebound for you and comes up big. And he continues to defend at a pretty decent level. I know he was pushed around at times last night, but that was same thing with Henry Vassar. And then Derek Dixon, you just can't say enough about this kid. I mean, he comes back after a game where Kyan Evans ends up closing the game for you, and we thought it was the right decision. He ends up hitting the most important shot of the game for Carolina. That was huge. So, I mean, yeah, he's been resilient the entire year. I think what you've said is very apt when it comes to him is that he's just a freshman point guard, man. And when it comes to freshman point guards at Carolina, especially guys that aren't ranked inside of the top 10 in the country when they arrive at Carolina, it's going to take them a little bit of time. And guess what? That's okay. And I think that was what you saw last night was when he needed to step up, another game where Carolina, was looking for somebody at that guard spot. Hey, man, right now, Henry, gave us what he could give you while he was out there on the floor. Jaren Stevenson is, not a guy that's going to be pouring in, 17, 20 in a game, something like that very often. We need somebody else to step up. He's the guy that steps up. And it feels like in some of those bigger games that Carolina's played, and don't get it wrong, this was a pretty big game for Carolina. He ends up stepping up and making the plays, especially late, that Carolina needs to. You talk about how Jaren Stevenson's a winner. So is Derek Dixon. I mean, he's a guy that just makes winning plays for Carolina when they need it. I mean, to do what he did against Kentucky and then in a game like this to hit that shot, that is huge. So that's the reason why I'm hoping he's the next 4-year Tar Heel. That'd be real nice if that ends up working out that way. But yeah, what a strong performance from both of those guys last night, bouncing back from relatively quiet performances against Virginia Tech.
Last thing I wrote down, and then we'll get to the discussion topic. We got to give the team a round of applause for what last night. They go 11 of 15, so for 73%. You had Stevenson miss one late. You had Trimble miss one late as well. But for the most part, like had Carolina had one of their Syracuse or Virginia Tech performances, they lose the game. Like if they would have left, 6+ points at the foul line, they don't get the job done. So, look at their last 2 wins. They were 23 of 30 against Virginia Tech. Last night they were 11 of 15. Both of their 3 free throw performances in those games led to their wins. After back-to-back games where they shot 54% from the foul line against Cuse, 47% from the foul line against Louisville, that's still not – they're not shooting lights out. They're not shooting 80+% from the foul line, but they're still getting there, and they're shooting 73+%. And for this team, if they can shoot that number much more consistently, it'll carry them a long way. And it's because there will be games in tournament play that will be determined by the charity stripe. Let's get to our discussion topic. Then we'll hand out some game balls and get out of this edition of the podcast. There's no one here that upholds the standard of what Carolina basketball is and should be more than I do. I believe that this is a program that is a Final Four pedigree program. That every year, your objective is to put together a roster that can win a conference championship and go to a Final Four. Carolina's they're not going to win an ACC regular season title. To be determined about the ACC tournament. Then we'll find out what they can do in March. Am I crazy to think, though, at 24-6, at 12-5 in the league, with an inside track now to secure the all-important double bye, with a school record 18-0 home wins, first undefeated home season since the last time you won a national championship, that this season is already a success and that March could just be the icing on top of the cake. Because if you would have told me back in October that Carolina would miss 9 games from Seth Trimble, 5 games from Caleb, or 6 games from Caleb Wilson, and 2 games from Henry Vassar, I would not tell you they'd be 24-6. I would tell you they would not be 12-5. They would probably be a borderline tournament team, if not clearly out of the picture.
Mm-hmm.
How those are your 3 best players that have combined to miss 9, 6, 17 of the 29 games that you have, or 30 games you've played so far. Like and part of that was because there was a doubt with Hubert Davis. There was doubt with this coaching staff. And I think both of those have individually answered the call. Carolina's 12-2 since the West Coast road trip. Like when they came back from the West Coast, it wasn't just you and I that were holding Hubert Davis accountable and having the tough conversations. It was everybody in the Carolina community that were all having an eyebrow raised. And what's Carolina going to do? Because I feel like their coach was at a crossroads. They responded. This coaching staff that I've been very critical of, because I wonder, is it the best staff that could be around Hubert Davis? Look at the job they've done. And I think you've kind of seen guys like Pat Sullivan take on more of a leadership role on the bench. He's much more engaged during the game. We all know how close Brad Frederick is to Hubert Davis. We obviously want to win an ACC tournament title. We want to get to a Final Four, have a chance to play for a national championship. But with all things considered, I'm very pleased with how this season has turned out. Like, to me, barring, an upset in the first round of the tournament, and depending on the health of the roster, could impact how we feel about that game as well. But I think Carolina's answered a lot of questions this year. And for that, I sit here and say, with one more game to go in the regular season, I'm comfortable saying this year it's been a successful year for Hubert Davis and this Carolina basketball program.
It feels like you can say that, right? It feels like we're at that point. Would I say guaranteed that it is a successful season? Not yet, because I think you've got to see what happens in the NCAA tournament. Do they find a way to get if they get past that first round game, I think it's probably a success. It really just depends on what seed line they get. I think that would be the most important thing. If they end up on the 5 line, if they somehow end up on that 6 line, which, Lenardi has been toying with that being where Carolina could be at. Again, I understand he's not the most accurate bracket person out there, but if for some reason they do end up being on that line, then they're going to, in that second round game, they could be a little overmatched. It really just depends. They could be playing a team that's better than them. But I would like to say that if they get past that first round game, then yeah, I'm going to consider it a success, especially if they get past the first weekend. They get to the second weekend, it's a success. And I get it. That's not the standard of Carolina. That's not where you should be at. But as you said, they've combined to miss 15 games because Henry overlaps with Caleb. But regardless, still 15 games, that's half your season. That's half your regular season that you're missing. And we don't know how much longer. We don't know if Caleb's going to play on Saturday. We don't know if Caleb's going to play in the ACC tournament. We don't know when he's coming back. So it could be even further into that. So it just continues to show. It's an amazing job that's done by Hubert Davis. And yes, we were very critical of him after that West Coast road trip. Because you got to remember, the thing also was that Carolina didn't play the gauntlet that they usually play in the non-conference. So they weren't going through this stretch that had them prepared. We thought, man, you played a really easy non-conference schedule. Now you go into conference play in a conference that was incredibly down last year, and you lose to 2 teams on the West Coast, 2 teams that we don't think are going to be that good. That's how you got to the mind space that you got to, which made you say, is this thing really heading in the wrong direction again? Are we going to be again sitting on the bubble and having to go through that again? We're not. And so it really shows that, yes, it is a step in the right direction for Hubert Davis. Now, in order for it to be called a successful season, I think guaranteed got to get past that first round game. If you do that, then I think we're having the conversation and saying, yeah, anybody that says it's not a successful season, you're crazy, even if it doesn't live up to the Carolina standards, the lofty Carolina standards that we have.
All right, let's hand out some game balls, then we'll get out of this edition of the podcast. I'll go first, and I'll take Luka Bogavac. I feel like I got to take him after the tweet that I sent out on Saturday, and the discussion topic we had basically begging Hubert Davis to start Jonathan Powell over him, but the transfer from Montenegro responds in a big way. 20 points, 6 of 14 from the field, 6 of 10 from 3, 2 from 2 from the foul line, 1 rebound, 3 assists, 3 fouls, 2 turnovers, and he scored his 20 points in just 23 minutes, his first 20-point game as a Tar Heel. So my game ball for the win over Clemson has to go to Luka Bogavac.
Yeah, I got to give it to Jaren Stevenson, man. I thought, again, we talked about how important every rebound was for him, but comes up with the most important rebound of the game. Scores 9 points for Carolina, was 4 of 5 from the foul line, so got it done at the charity stripe. Leads the team overall in rebounding with 10 rebounds. Leads them in offensive rebounds with 3 assists as well. 2 turnovers. So, again, not perfect, but still did what he had to do. A key block in there as well, and also had a steal. So doing it on the defensive end of the floor, but mostly what he did on the glass was just huge for Carolina. Love that effort from a guy that, it would be easy with how much his role has changed throughout the season to just say, you know what, I'm not satisfied with where I'm at. I hate how much it keeps changing. He hasn't done that at any point this season, and it showed up again last night with a huge performance against the Clemson Tigers when it was needed.
That's going to wrap it up for this edition of the podcast, guys. In the meantime, we encourage you to visit the website, HeelToughBlog.com, where we had coverage of the win over Clemson. Go back, check out that recap article, if you will. Next up will be the Duke game. So you know the drill, how we've attacked those the game previews all year long. The preview will go up on Saturday morning. The recap will more than likely be up on Sunday because we do value, especially for that game, doing the podcast first, especially if Carolina gets a win. And we're hoping that we get a regular season sweep of the Blue Devils as we keep you covered on the basketball side of things. Anthony has you covered on the football side of stuff. Has an NFL draft article up about the guys that went through the combine last week in Indianapolis and where their stock is right now in the ongoing NFL draft process. As for the podcast, you guys know where to find us. Every major podcasting platform, just search the Four Corners Podcast. We'll pop up there. We encourage you guys to rate, review, and subscribe. That way you don't miss any audio editions of the show. If you're a video consumer, the best way to keep up with us, like and follow the Facebook page at Heel Tough Blog. Subscribe to the YouTube channel at Heel Tough Blog, or follow us on Twitter at HTB underscore Josh for me, at HTB Anthony for him. The stream will be found on both of our Twitter sites. And you want to hit that subscribe button because there's going to be pretty much a podcast a day coming your way for what feels like the foreseeable future. We'll be back tomorrow night live with the Duke preview. We'll have on Friday, that'll be the Hubert Davis pre-Duke press conference. We'll have the Duke recap as well. That'll come your way on Saturday night. And then, look, we got a lot of news about the arena and the latest update on that at some point we'll need to come through and talk about that with you guys as well. And the next week is the ACC tournament, where, they're going to be previews and recaps flying at you left and right. So make sure you're hitting those subscribe buttons no matter where you catch the podcast. That way you're catching all of our great content here in the month of March. But with that, folks, that is going to wrap up this edition of the show. I do want to thank Anthony once again for hosting with me. We want to thank you guys for both watching and listening. And as always, go Tar Heels.